moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and we've got a viewer question here that definitely is one that I care about a lot. It goes, hello Perch. First, before I begin, I want to tell you I'm a big fan of the channel. I apologize in advance for my English since it's not my first language. I might not be clear enough with whatever I want to say. Spoilers, there's zero problems. Your English is great. I wish more people who claim to speak English wrote as good as you. Anyway, one of the reasons I think a lot of people are chased away from comics, particularly in the casual crowd, is the way they are collected. I'm not a big fan of manga, but when I went to a Barnes & Noble recently, the manga shelves were visually appealing, with most of the volumes being the same or close in size. But you look into the only comic shelf and it's a visual mess. Tons of different formats and series disorganized. I think this also plays into why that crowd might be interested in comics and goes to places like Barnes & Noble prefer to go to manga. And with the recent announcement of Penguin Random House having a new reprint of some comics adding yet another format to the collection just messes up the process of picking up the comic more. Personally, I feel that Marvel, DC, Image, and others should continue having some sort of general retail collection. And then he goes into some specifics here. But then comes back, like, to avoid it being stupid expensive, maybe they could lower quality paper, reduce the size of the volumes, maybe it could be 75% smaller than a regular issue. And at the end of the volume, maybe it can have an ad for whatever app the publisher has for digital content. It's like, it's funny. Well, anyway, we'll get into this. By the way, you're doing great. I feel the comics have way too many different trades or collections of their comics. So in addition of being accessible of where should they start, they should become inaccessible in the sense of what version should I get. Of course, I'm only talking about places like Barnes & Noble, Target, and shops and such. Comic shops can still be the place to get more specialized trades because I feel like the casual audience is pretty important to make the process of reading comics as simple as possible. And then he included a couple images here in showing how kind of the measurements are all jacked up and how simple it could be. And so a ton of things here. Is it striking to you, like it is to me, that here's somebody who's worried a little bit about their English as not their first language, has a better idea of how comics should be printed and reprinted than they're currently doing? Doesn't it make you wonder? It really makes you wonder what the people whose job it is to do this, whose full-time job, what in the world are they doing every day? Like when you go to those shelves, and I've shown videos in the past, and you look at Barnes & Noble, and you look at this, it looks like a very messy, chaotic shelf of sizes and formats and trade dress, and not just between Marvel and DC. You look at Batman, and literally, and we've shown this before, you have comics where they just change the font and the numbering and the layout of the spine midway through the collection. So you have like volume 1, 2, and 3 look the same, but then 4 is just randomly different. And then 5 is back to the way it was. And then 6 is different again in a new way. And it's, you ask yourself, why? How in the world is this happening? Why is this happening? Whose plan was this? It's insanity. And I got to stress at this point, before we go into kind of some of the specifics here, there's not just one person whose job it is to do this. There's many people whose sole job it is to do this. And the result we get is crazy. And it was crazy before. It's crazier now when you can, like this person who wrote in here, notes, you can go into a bookstore, you can go into a Barnes & Noble, you can go into a Target, and you can see manga putting it out properly. Like the example is right there. You don't have to think. It's literally right there. In the past, maybe you had to go to a different section, to like the fantasy section or the nonfiction section. You could see like, oh, look at how all the books are more or less kind of the same format. So they fit on the shelf neatly, and it's visually appealing, and it draws people in. I think any intelligent person in that job should be able to, translate that into, oh, this is what would be good for comics. But people are stupid. And so, I don't know. Maybe it's hard not to be really harsh on this, because it is such an absolutely obvious thing that should be done better. And it's crazy it's not. Yeah, absolutely. The other piece that you brought in here, kind of just in a a tiny little slice of the mail, was around price. And this is one of those places where, well, okay, two comments. I'll come back to price actually in a moment, because I think this is important to mention first. I like what was said at the end, which is to say that in the comic shop, having those different formats, having this prestige edition, having kind of this higher quality paper, all that kind of stuff, probably matters to that crowd. The collectors want things in special ways. They'll get off on kind of artist editions and other things. They're built to take that. Now, by the way, a lot of collectors who then put the comics up on the shelf still would like it if they were organized and neat and in the same format. They would still appreciate that. But failing that, they're still okay with. They're okay with more diversity in the format of the book that's coming out, more unique looks. But the casual customer, the person who is going to Barnes & Noble, person's going into Target and everything else, uniformity is key for them. They're looking for no barrier of entry in order to pick up that book. They're looking for something that is very comfortable, familiar, looks the same, formatted the same. You look at the book fairs that go on with Scholastic in the schools, the stuff that tends to be promoted the most and does the best is the stuff that has the exact same format every time. That's what works. So if we're appealing to that audience, and we should be in these areas, then the standard format, everything else makes sense. And then it gets to the cost, the price. So one of the big pushbacks you get when you talk to the big publishers, and this includes, by the way, people like Dark Horse. I've had this, I was thinking the most aggressive argument I've had on this topic was with a guy who used to work at Dark Horse. Now I don't think works anywhere. It's funny how that works. But it was no customer will accept cheap paper. And if you stick around comics, they always say newsprint, but newsprint is a bit of a misnomer. I mean, newsprint is one type of paper, sure, but there's other formats. I think that a lot of manga is printed on something that isn't newsprint, but it's still a cheaper paper. You can tell it's a cheaper paper. It feels cheaper. It's not as high a quality, but the book also is coming in at $7, and Target has like the 25% off. So I mean, you're able to pick up these books for $5 with 160 pages in this little Tonkabon small trade format. That's going to be great for casual readers. They do not care about paper, and this is one of the very strange things that people inside of comics seem obsessed with. They were like, no, you've got to have expensive paper. You've got to have high quality stuff, or people won't buy it. That's not true. Flatly not true. People do not, casual in particular, do not care about that. Yes, some of the collectors do, particularly the ones that are willing to shell out for an omnibus or and put it this way, it's not rocket science. If somebody is walking into a comic shop and they're buying $120 Premier Artist Edition or something like that, then yeah, they're going to expect high quality paper. Of course, they're paying $120 for it. But if you put something out on the shelf that is $5, then of course people are going to be okay with something that is cheaper paper, and they're going to prefer it. If you can go in and say, look, we're going to offer this to you for $5 to $10, somewhere in that range, 160 pages. Tons of content, maybe black and white only. Who knows? It's cheaper. It's simpler. Again, manga is doing this. We're going to make it consistent. We're going to make it clean. It's going to be on the shelf. Yes, customers will go for newsprint. And by the way, even the collectors, if you offer them like, hey, would you like to buy this X-Men comic here for $4.99 in how it's currently printed? Or would you like it for $2.99 with cheaper paper? A good part of that audience will take the $2.99 version. That they'll take it because they'll want to save money. It's this insanity of it's got to be a certain way. It's got to be random in how it's designed. I mean, I've heard people give full aggressive arguments to we can't standardize because then the comics will seem less special. It's the opposite, my friend. Go into, again, Barnes & Noble, look at the shelf, look at any of these places, and you see the cluttered mess that is the graphic novels, and I'm not exaggerating. It looks junky. that turns people off very quickly. It looks like my wife mentioned this once. We go in and we're looking at the Barnes and Noble shelf, and she goes, "It feels like some kid came in here and they just threw all the books off the shelf and then shoved them back in any order. It looks like it's a mess. It looks like how the kids section of the bookstore sometimes looks, where it's just junky." And when you pick one of those books up out of the junk and it's got in some cases, $25, $40, $80 price tag on it, it's just the price doesn't match the visual and you don't go for it. And that's it. To me, it's very simple. Anyway, thank you very much. It is messy. Comic shelves, I think, are death. Too many trade formats are stupid. And you should be looking at ways to drive the price down. And yes, that means cheaper paper. Of course. Why not? Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. Really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting the channel, and want to hear your opinions on it as well. So let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.